We're on board then and ready for the second race, round 23 of the Pickup Truck Racing Championship. Anthony Hawkins on pole with Michael Smith alongside, then Paul Tompkins and Dave Longhurst on row 2. Nick Grindrod and Paul Jones the third row. They're followed by Lee Rogers and Tony Mumford. Then it's James Goldstraw and Charlie Weaver. David O'Regan and Phil White on row 6. Steve Dance at the back of the field. A number of drivers having changed components on the cars. And if you break a seal, you go to the back of the field. We're getting ready to go. Lights out for the rolling start for the pickup trucks and down into Hatchett's hairpin. There is Charlie Weaver in 20 down towards the back of the field. As we said, a lot of repairs going on, but it looks like Anthony Hawkins got the lead as they went round. There is Phil White round the outside. Steve Dance chasing him in truck number 16. The gap in the championship between Nick Grindrod and Steve Dance now down to 22 points because, oh, there's a spin there. Tony Mumford out in truck number 7. A couple of other guys involved as well. We're on board with Michael Smith. Paul Tompkins in front of us, but there's the race leader. Anthony Hawkins gets it all, gets a big tank slapper on there in the 98 machine. Very much an oval racing driver, Anthony. He wanted to focus on running on the ovals at Rockingham with the pickups, but he's really got stuck into circuit racing over the last few years. And here's Nick Grindrod, fantastic onboard camera angle showing the double champion at work aboard the 22 truck. Michael Smith ahead of him in 93. Paul Tompkins, though, having a good go, has come through very well indeed. That reliability on the 12 truck certainly standing him in very good stead, as well as some fast drives. And Grindrod goes for third place round the outside at the hairpin. This is a very typical oval move, but Michael Smith is wily to that. And Dave Longhurst goes through. So Grindrod loses a place there. Similar colour scheme, red and yellow in front of him. So Dave Longhurst goes through and makes up a position. I don't think Nick fully thought that one out. If he'd kept his eyes on his mirrors, then perhaps he'd have known that Longhurst was going to come through. But Nick Grindrod knows that there's time here to do it. It's a 20-lap race here around Pembrey, as Anthony Hawkins still has the lead. Second place, Paul Tompkins, man from Tadley in Hampshire, 44 years of age. There is Michael Smith in 93, the 37-year-old from Hartlepool. So drivers from all over the UK, and indeed, of course, we've got the 21-year-old from Ireland, David O'Regan. David, who's won a race this year. Michael Smith look at the inside line there on Paul Tompkins. Now remember, Tompkins second in the opening race. Anthony Hawkins hanging on to this one, and Anthony always in with the shout of a podium if he is in the mix. He's had a couple of podiums so far this year. Dave Longhurst this time trying the outside line, doing what Grindrod did last time, but goes out wide and Nick's got the position back. Longhurst gets bundled onto the grass, and now Nick Grindrod decides the inside line's better. Side by side with Michael Smith. Now coming through to Benny, can't quite do it that way. He'll switch back to the inside line. You can see the 70 graphic indicating he's got maximum ballast on board, and through to Benny he goes through, grabs the inside line. Well, Nick thought that one out. The sun getting lower in the sky as the day moves on here at Pembrey, and Nick Grindrod moves on in 22. A little bit of a moment off onto the grass there. We've got a challenge for the lead. Paul Tompkins has gone through into the lead just ahead of us. There he is, the back truck with the green trim goes through. Anthony Hawkins in white is second. Nick Grindrod third, then Michael Smith. Dave Longhurst back on track. The red and yellow truck is there as well. And then a bit of a gap back. Now is that Lee Rogers down behind them? He's having a much better meeting here this weekend. Always seems to go well at Pembrey, does Lee? Down the main straight past the start-finish line. Unusual that both racetracks in Wales you can't see as a spectator the start-finish line. Anglesey hasn't got any spectator facilities opposite the start-finish line, and neither has Pembrey. As Longhurst goes through, this time on the inside of Michael Smith rather than the inside. On board we go with Smithy. Cedes the place down to fifth. Dave Longhurst chops his way through. And now we'll start to battle on Nick Grindrod, who goes past 98, Anthony Hawkins. And here comes Dave Longhurst. Look at the tail out of the 23 truck. Nearly goes into Anthony Hawkins, who left enough room. These guys really do know how to race against each other. And Dave Longhurst, the tall man from Worthing in Sussex, showing that he's still got all the skill that took him to those short oval championships those years back. It's still Paul Tompkins out front. This is the view from Dave Longhurst now into third place. So it's Paul Tompkins, black and green, from the yellow and red of Nick Grindrod. Red and yellow, I suppose we could say, for 23, Dave Longhurst. That's a shortened version of his famous oval racing number, 230. Down the main straight they go. Then it's Michael Smith chasing Paul Tompkins, who's, I beg your pardon, Anthony Hawkins, who's still in fourth place. So down into Hatchets. I've got to say, one of my favourite pickup corners. It's actually part of a redundant short oval. He used to race on the tri-oval here. I'm pretty sure Nick Grindrod won in midget racing on the short oval. Here we come then. There is Nick in 22 chasing. 23, Dave Longhurst is still there in third. This is the view from Steve Dance. He's a little bit further back. It's Phil White in front of him, about to have a go at 69, Lee Rogers, but Rog, as ever, running well in the SHP Engineering livery car. Paul Tompkins is off through the dirt. Oh, disappointment for Winkle, who goes off the track. He gets it back on, and past goes Steve Dance. Phil White going through as well in 63. Got to try and clear the windows now. Tompkins, a quick recovery down behind Lee Rogers. So we're watching the battle between 63 Phil White and 16 Steve Dance, who's losing points crucially on this man who now leads the race again. 22 Nick Grindrod, but coming under pressure from Dave Longhurst in 23. Down into Hatchets. Longhurst looks up the inside. Grindrod, I think, took a slightly more generous line, which perhaps indicates he doesn't feel too threatened at the moment. This is what Longhurst is contending with. He's got the sun, of course, in his eyes, and the 22 truck right ahead of him. Two sequential numbers. You could be forgiven thinking that they're both red and yellow, that they are teammates, but they're not teammates. Both of them running under their own steam. As we said, Grindrod, who comes from Birmingham, tended, amongst others, by his dad, Carl Grindrod, himself a former oval racer. And brother Richard used to race pickups and legends. He's off doing drifting championships and the like now, and very successfully too. So Longhurst goes through in second. Anthony Hawkins looking good for third at the moment in 98. There he is. Man from Sutton Coldfield, so another Midlander. Then it's Michael Smith. Michael running the David O'Regan truck this year. David having decided that it's probably a better idea to worry about the travelling rather than worry about the preparation of the truck. Seems to be standing him in good stead because he's got a good point score. He's actually ahead of Michael Smith in the point standings at the moment as we go back on board with Steve Dance trying to deal with 63 Phil White. Phil's first retirement of the year in race number 1, the reigning champion at Rockingham, as we mentioned. Looked very much at home on the oval this year. Took a couple of podiums, a race win at Rockingham. And Steve Dance is the man that's putting pressure on him at the moment. Both of these guys, top oval men in the day. Lee Rogers in 69, a former West Country hot rod champion. And he's chasing Paul Tompkins. This is a good indicator of performance for Lee Rogers. Bear in mind that Tompkins has had a very good points score here as we go on board with Charlie Weaver. And it looks like Charlie's maybe got the kettle on here, and I think he's going to go into retirement. Oh, that's a shame for Charlie Weaver. A good spirited effort from him, but he is out of the race as we go side by side. Anthony Hawkins has now been passed by 93. Michael Smith goes through. Hard on the brakes, not as hard as some of the drivers do. We're not seeing the brakes, but look at Hawkins. Very quick exit, gets back up the inside line. That's going to be continue to be an inside line as they go around Spitfires down towards Debenny, and then of course here is Debenny the next corner, which if you can hang on you can grab an inside line. But Hawkins very quick out of the hairpin, but by that time he'd lost the advantage to this man, Michael Smith. Smith up into third place here. Dave Longhurst, the man he's chasing there in 23. So Dave with 0 kilograms of ballast on the truck. Nick Grindrod with the full 70, past Charlie Weaver's machine. And this is the view from Steve Dance trying to get past at the moment. Fluid coming up from Phil White. That's going to hamper Steve Dance because it all seems to be going on the driver's side of the windshield. This is the battle that we were looking at on board. Now, in terms of championship points at the moment, Nick Grindrod 22 points adrift of Steve Dance. So Dance has got to make up a few places. It's 5 points per place here. You do get points as well for qualifying. And after this weekend, we've got 2 more races. They are Brands Hatch, and we'll be covering them on Last Lap for Motors TV. So it looks like the championship's going to go to the wire, but neither this man, Nick Grindrod, or the man that we were looking at, Steve Dance, can afford to have a retirement. Nick's had 2 so far this year. Steve Dance has had the 1, so the championship, if they both finish all the other races, is going to come down to consistency as much as anything else. Grindrod looking very comfortable here. There he goes, the 22 machine pulling clear at the moment of Dave Longhurst, so he's seen off the challenge of Longhurst in second position. This is the view in the office of the 22 truck. Viking spares the company that support Nick, and through he goes. V-Tune on the back as well. Dave Longhurst still trying to hunt him down. This has been a good run from Dave Longhurst so far. He hasn't done all the season, Dave, but when he does, he's actually never finished outside of the top 6 in all the races that he's finished. He's had a couple of DNFs, but he's always up the sharp end. So Longhurst still trying to close down on Grindrod, who's getting away. Dave Longhurst with the fastest lap of the race on lap 7, 64.093. Here is Steve Dance still trying to cut his way through the field and negate any points advantage that Nick Grindrod's got. You can see he's carrying 70 kilos of ballast as well. Anthony Hawkins in 98 still running well. And that's Phil White up behind him in 63, who's pulled out a little bit of a gap now over Steve Dance. 3 or 4 lengths to the good. Waved yellow flags there because we've got a truck off on the outside of the circuit. And Steve Dance, I beg your pardon, Phil White looking down the inside line, and he's going to go through side by side with Anthony Hawkins. Here they come then, it was out of Honda, and he's got the inside line surely as they come down into Hatchett's hairpin. Phil White moves up into fourth position behind Michael Smith. So that was the battle for fourth. Hawkins again, you can see, quick out of the hairpin. Puts the metal down. Is he going to be able to get Phil White back? Join us after the break to find out.